Namaskar. I welcome you all at the second webinar of the Out of the Box series organized by IAS deemed to be University and the Department of Psychology. At IAS, we aim to transcend the distance and mental barriers between the educators and the learners and also strive to contribute to a continuous flow of new knowledge and ideas. Before we begin with today's seminar, I would like to acquaint the audience with the format of the webinar for today. The speaker would be sharing her views for about 40 minutes, after which the audience is free to ask any questions they have using the question and answer tab shown on their Zoom screen. The speaker for today shares an equal enthusiasm when it comes to the dissemination of knowledge and discussion of ideas. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Sneha Nathawat, our speaker for the day. Dr. Sneha is working as an assistant professor at the IAS deemed to be University. Her area of specialization is clinical psychology, and she also shows a keen interest in counseling psychology. She has been a facilitator of the subject for the past 5 years and aims to contribute significantly to the field of psychology. I thank you all for being with us today. Now, I would like to request Dr. Sneha to please take over the session.
Am I audible? I'm sure I'm audible. And a very good evening to one and all present here. And thank you, Sankul, for such warm and kind words. And sorry for the little bit of the delay and the technical glitches. Good evening, everyone. Hope you all are safe and healthy at your homes during this pandemic. Many of you have tried to do new things and be a little more explorative. And I was also trying my hands on few things. And one day, this book was suggested to me, which piqued my interest and inspired me to talk about it. So before I, talk about it, and before I, start with it, I would just like to you all to watch a short video. Okay.
As part of an experiment to explore the human mind, we asked 22 people to solve the same riddle and recorded their responses. Feel free to participate also. Are you ready?
The riddle. A father is about to bring his son to a job interview, applying for a position at a large stockbrokers company in the city. Just as they arrive at the company's parking lot, the son's phone rings. He looks at his father, who says, "Go ahead, answer it." The caller is the trading company CEO, who says, "Good luck, son, you've got this." The son ends the call and once again looks at his father, who is still next to him in their car. How is this possible?
He gets a call from the CEO, but it says,
"Good luck, son."
But he was next to him.
So it's not the father. I think it was probably an audio recording of his father.
Maybe he made it a demo tape.
Like he has two fathers?
This is a hard one.
Maybe it's a word joke, like it's the grandfather of the son. No, I think his name is Son. I don't know. Maybe it's just like an old man, calling a younger guy son. I have no idea.
The answer. It's his mother.
Ah. Oh, that's so stupid. Yes, of course. Ah.
I should have thought of that, yes.
The CEO is a woman.
So I'm biased in a sense. Is this about diversity and inclusion?
That's really mind-blowing, actually.
So I always thought that I'm not very sexist. But in spite of that, I think these subconscious biases are there in everyone's mind.
How much bias I still have in terms of thinking that the CEO needs to be a man.
Yeah, I definitely was picturing a man.
They identify with males more than females these days.
Why can't women also be CEOs or doctors or, right? When I think about a CEO or someone that's high position within a company, I mostly think of men. And it's a shame, I think.
And it's so weird because I'm a CEO. And I'm a woman.
And I want to be a CEO. Why didn't I think about that?
I believe women can absolutely be CEOs, and that's definitely something that we should work on, especially when you're saying that so many people have been told this riddle and most people haven't gotten it.
Women make great CEOs and great leaders as well. And yet only 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. Let's change our mindset.
Many of you might have guessed it right. Many of you haven't, but that is not the point. The point is to make everyone realize that somewhere at the back of our minds, we all are biased. And that can only be changed when our mindset will change. Now, the topic for what I have chosen for myself is women, the relative being. So when something is said to be relative, it means that its value depends on what you're comparing it to. And someone or when women, since, it makes us inferior and the other person whom we are being compared to superior automatically. Okay. And women since centuries have been treated as relative being. Her value, her self-worth, all is contingent upon how males treat her. And I'm going to talk about a book which was written almost 70 years back. And by the end of this talk, you all will realize that situations back then and now are still so similar. So I'm not going to go in the details of the book because of the time constraints, but I'm going to talk about few basic components of the book. One is not born a woman, but becomes a woman. Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. These are few famous lines quoted by French feminist and existentialist Simone de Beauvoir. So today I'm going to talk about Simone and her views about females. And she has been one of a kind to write about feminism. Before I start, let me give you a brief introduction about the woman herself. Simone de Beauvoir was born in 1908 into a reactionary Catholic family with pretensions to nobility. But after World War I, her father lost most of his fortune, and without dowries, Simone with her sister had dim prospects for marriage within their class. She was always aware that her father had hoped to have a son instead of two daughters. And the family struggled throughout the girl's childhood. Her mother, Francoise, despite belonging to a wealthy family, did all the housework. And her mother's suffering made her think for the very first time about the women and the society they live in. And from there, the idea came to her that women have always been, suppressed. And she thought about it that women of any quality, high-born or low, contended with her a lot or alienated, expects from a male world. Talking about a little bit of Simone's schooling. Simone loved school and graduated in 1924 with distinction. She was very good in academics. So she studied mathematics and literature, philosophy from University of Paris. And Simone de Beauvoir at the age of 38, so she was quite young when she wrote this book. So at the age of 38, she wrote this book named The Second Sex, which is also popularly known as the Feminist Bible. And it took her 14 years before she could pen down her views about feminism in her book. Now let's talk about the title a bit. So what do we mean by second? So second basically indicates that women have always been treated inferior, secondary, and dependent on men. On the other hand, men have been superior ones, independent and primary. Males have been the default thing, and to be the default way was the masculine way. Through her abstract thinking, she came to conclusion that women have been suppressed since ages. They all have been produced culturally and socially, and society have always shown the dependency of females on males. Simone de Beauvoir also contradicted the construct of females. According to her, there is no significant difference between both the genders. It is just that humanity is divided into two parts. And Beauvoir had a rigid and firm views that there is no difference between males and females except the biological ones. And they have the same blood, the same flesh. The only difference is that they experience the world differently. And this difference is not required. It is not a good reason to differentiate between males, between both the genders. She asserts that women are in a great part to blame for this oppression, as they are just as capable as men of making choices that they could elevate their status, but at that point of time had chosen not to. This construct of socialization adversely affected women and their perceptions about themselves as well. They were told that women need to have views of others to validate their self-worth. Females always had few legal rights, which resulted in lesser of a public influence. And they learned to objectify themselves as men objectify them. Married or unmarried, young or old, every woman is conditioned to match the standards for the external factors. And those factors can be anything. It can be beauty, cosmetics, fashion, and the list is endless, which were all completed in perpetuating the objectification of women. Women have always been treated as the other thing, which is not defined on its own terms. It is defined in relation to the ones, to the males. And man always acted as subjects and women as objects. Now, what do we mean by subjects and objects? So subject is a person who is an actor, one who takes actions, who has preferences, and who can perform autonomy. But on the other hand, the other side is the object, is a thing that satisfies the goals and preferences of the subject. It is a person who is acting upon, a passive, and has no goals or preferences. And if this construct is not changed, if women they are not being treated as subjects and they are, the objects, and if this construct won't have a balance, then obviously it's going to have a very bad or adverse effect on the society, because all oppression creates a state of war, and this is no exception. If women need to achieve liberation, they need to understand and they need to recognize many of the social norms as constructions. Only then they will have the freedom to escape their context and determine their own destiny. When we endure this point, we do not at all mean that men should be acting as objects and females or women should be acting as subjects. No. It basically means that women and men both should act as subjects and objects simultaneously, and for each other. Every individual should be taken as valid. They ought to have autonomy. And Simone's view are so appropriate if we see in the today's world. They are so appropriate in the today's scenario as well. Talking about the current scenario, men are coming in terms. Men are coming in terms with the new condition of women. Feminism has been a culture nowadays, but what do we mean by feminism? So let me first of all tell you what basically feminism means. So it is not someone who thinks women are better than men, neither that men are inherently bad. Feminism is something or someone who thinks that women and men are structured, they are not someone who thinks that women and men are structured equally, they are identical, because they are not, they are different. So feminism is the idea. Feminism is the idea that postulates society ought to be structured in such a way that your gender is not by itself a good reason to keep you from doing something you desire. Your gender should not act as a barrier from things you want to do. And gender should not be a characteristic which retains you or disqualifies you for doing any kind of job in society. Society should ensure that individual good of citizen and should create opportunities for individual, regardless of any race, gender, ethnicity, anything. It should be fair for all. And females should be allowed, rather I should use the word encouraged. So females should be encouraged to actually act in a way how we all see ourselves. And we all see ourselves fit and contented as individuals. And they should be allowed to be autonomous agents and decide what is good for themselves and give them space to act on those beliefs. And this is something that today's females are also working towards. Now the situations have changed. Today's, the customs impose fewer constraints on females than in the past. But still, females remain a vassal imprisoned in her condition. The moment a female stops being a parasite, the whole dependent system will collapse. And there will be no longer need of a masculine mediator, to link her and the universe. There'll be no one in the middle, as a mediating or as a joining agent if they become self-sufficient. And one can be self-sufficient. What we all are suffering from nowadays, most of us are suffering nowadays as females, is the dilemma, the chaos which is inside us, the dilemma between the career or a family. And this conflict has always tangled us in every situation. Females who are working and have a career, but still their salary is being treated as, and the salary means an extra income in the family. Even if a woman feels economically independent, and it is not a moral, social, or psychological situation identical to a man. This is where we lack. And this is where we need to change our perspective. We need to change our mindset and make the whole society for individuals. Now, many of you might be thinking that do we, actually need to make such changes? Do we need to change our mindset? We are already pro-females and we are living in 21st century. It is not the matter of concern, but sadly, yes, it is a matter of concern because by amending few laws and, changing doing certain reformations in the amendments and reservations policies, and we just can't dust our hand from the responsibilities we have for females. It has to come from within us. And that's what Simone propagated. Treat females as individuals and not as liabilities. And I'm saying this because our history has validated it through various instances that females are treated secondary. Let me take you a few years back when women did not even have the basic right to vote. So in 1920, due to the combined efforts of National American Woman Suffrage Association and National Women's Party, the 19th Amendment enfranchising women was finally ratified. A French feminist organization formed in 1909 that fought for the right of women to vote, which was eventually granted in 1945. If today we are able to, move forward is because of these because of these fearless ladies, because of the stepping stones laid by these females. And thankfully, in India, because of B.R. Ambedkar, Indian females always had the right to vote. Now, we might say it that now you're talking about the past, it has all gone, it is a thing that we can't retain back. So let us move today and have a look at the current scenario. It was, so today, only 15, I'm talking about the recent scenarios, okay? So only 15 out of the 193 UN member countries are led by women, 8 of whom are the country's first woman in power. As of today, only 17 nations have had a female leader. Doesn't it sound a little weird? Because the females constitute almost 50% of the population, and the representation is like negligent. It's hardly any representations of females in any sort of a manner. So female leadership is common, more common in some regions of the world than other, and India is amongst them. But when we talk about India, so we did have female leaders at a higher post, but are we talking about the true representations? Okay, so according to the list, I'm talking about now coming down to the, not on the hierarchy of the representation, I'm coming a little down. So according to the list of women representatives in national parliament put together by Inter-Parliamentary Union, India is on 149th rank out of 193. It means that 148 nations are ahead of us, despite we getting the right to vote and many other privileges almost before them. So as of 2014, we had only 12.5% of women in Lok Sabha. And let's talk about the pay gap. Even when we talk about the pay gap between the males and females is drastic one. You know, it's not in India, it's worldwide, it's baffling worldwide. Now, I might sound a little political, so let's not go into that scenario. Let us come back to our lives and let us talk about our daily life problems. Okay, so now when we talk about daily life things, let us talk about safety, which is one of the most basic things. Okay, so let me put up a small question before I move on. Supposing you are walking on a lone street. What is the first thought as a female amongst these three will come to your mind? What if I'm robbed? What if I'm abducted? Or what if I'm sexually harassed? Well, we all know the answer. Talking about passion, how many of you had to give up your dreams or had to compromise on your aspirations because your partner had to fulfill his, or your family did not allow you? I don't need any answer for that. You know it better. I'm just talking about the real life problems we face in our general day-to-day life instances. Talking about raising a family. When it comes to bear a child, I know that reproduction is a female's job, but caregiving is not a female's job. Caregiving can be, done by anyone. It's not that the mother has to be a caregiver. Anyone can be a caregiver. Why can't both the partners work simultaneously towards it? Why can't both adjust equally? Why cooking has been designated as a woman's primary job? Why a woman has to be more of a giver? And you know why? Because we all have been conditioned like that. Yes. By not confirming the norms of the society, society devalues us. See, society devalues a woman, and even a woman devalues herself, sexually and socially, because she has been incorporated with such values since childhood. The continuous war inside her between the dreams and aspirations she had set for herself and values and learning her family, her mother has been inculcating in her since childhood. One will feel like a woman, like a real woman from her own personal satisfaction. And she succeeds in it only when she accepts herself. And not when that she's made to accept the situations. And that acceptance will come when society will adapt feminism. And when society will change, that acceptance will come only when norms for females will change. That acceptance will come only when we treat everyone equally. As females, we can change the whole situation. You know, we can, by reconstructing a perspective, it's just that you have to change your mindset. We need to see and we need to have a fair and non-judgmental attitude towards our own gender and not letting the stereotype coming away. Before I end, I would just like to narrate a small incident about Simone. So one day, Simone de Beauvoir got a compliment that she has a man's intelligence, and she accepted it really happily, and she was feeling nice about it until she began to consider what it implies. The same way, we are accepting the world as they are treating us, accepting the compliments that you're getting, but think on it once. Are they actually the compliments? Are they actually talking about females as individuals, or they are just relating you with respect to the males? For example, we quite often hear like you are taking responsibility of your family just like a man, or you are the son of a family. Sorry, I don't consider them as compliments. Stop linking us with someone else and automatically making them superior and us inferior. Stop using those adjectives according to the gender. Treat females as separate identities, as independent individuals, because they are independent individuals. Once this thought process penetrates inside us, our perception of the world will automatically change. And we need to change. We need to make females as an identified person, as an identified individual, and not as a relative being. Thank you. And now I hand over the session to moderator.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that presentation, Dr. Sneha. I'm particularly fascinated that we're doing this right now, because I feel since the pandemic has started, a lot of such grave, intense issues have kind of buried down, right? But to talk about feminism on a platform where so many students have been able to join us today, it's actually quite glorious that we can utilize this time to build foundations against systems that have been so discriminatory to a population race that is by no means minor, no means less representative. So thank you for your views on that. I think there has been such a clamor for this particular session. Everybody was quite excited to hear your views, and I can see that they're quite wedged up into a lot of questions that you've proposed. That's going to keep us thinking for at least the rest of the evening. I'll certainly be thinking about those over the weekend for sure. So thank you for the food for thought as well. So the first question, and thank you so much everybody for submitting such wonderful questions over the Google form. I'll be picking some of them up. My apologies if we're not able to address all of them, but our attempt is that we would be encourage Dr. Sneha to try to answer as much as possible. One of the recurrent questions that Dr. Sneha, we received on our responses was that we have very strict, if not strict, very formalized customs and traditions, at least in the East. In India, we have formalized custom traditions where women play a very important role in family making, in decision making, but they're also relegated into some stereotypes. Then would feminism kind of create chaos into this system? Does this go against the traditional views? And if it does, how do we deal with that?
If you talk about customs and traditions, our customs and traditions are obviously very important to us because they are the building blocks of our society. But when these customs and traditions, hamper or come in a way of progress, then I think that they should be changed. And we have changed many of them, like talking about Parda system, Johar, Sati, child marriage, because they were followed because of various historical reasons, which are not relevant now. They are not, because the situations are not the same now. The mindset has changed. So if those customs and traditions comes in a progress, then we need to change. And before following any custom, we need to think in a logical manner. We should not just follow it because everyone is following it and it has been our family has been following it. What is the logic behind it? If you see every custom or every thing which is being followed earlier had some scientific reason behind it. So we need to find reason before following anything. We just need to do that. Yes.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of times we like to believe that traditions and customs are rigid when they're actually not. We make these cultures and we make these customs, right? So it's really in our hands to be changing all of those. That's something of an insight that you have provided.
And yes, you even talked about chaos, that obviously, by everyone wanting their rights and everyone being treated equally will create chaos. That is for sure. Because if anyone disobeys a norm or does not follow a norm, that the one is enforcing it does become uncomfortable and it creates a chaotic situation. For example, when India was fighting for freedom, we did not attain it overnight. Okay, it took us many years, and it also created a lot of chaos. But that doesn't mean that we were fighting for a wrong cause. Neither that we should stop standing up for our rights. We have to bear in mind that end result is for the betterment of the society and as a whole, even if the path is paved through chaos.
Absolutely. Great. There's another question that is somewhat linked to this. You know how whenever you get into a discussion about feminism, let me not even use the term feminism, you're sitting on a dinner table and you're discussing about gender equality and you propose that men and women are equal. This is, according to your lecture, of course, I assume that is the thoughts that you have generally in your mind. I have it, and a lot of the participants have. But there's this strange argument that's proposed more often than not that women are not equal to men and women are biologically weaker beings, which is supposed to hold them back. How would you combat such an argument when we're called weaker beings because we call it biologically weak and that might enroll into something else?
Okay, so first of all, we need to acknowledge the fact that biologically men and women are different, and we need to embrace it, first of all. So due to these biological differences, the strengths of body may differ, and that's undeniable. Okay, but that doesn't stop any woman from doing something which is out of the way. If we take example of sports, maybe you can take example of Fogart sisters or Mary Kom or Hima Das, or there are many other distinguishable females for excelling in their field, who are excelling in their fields. And I strongly feel that women are good in sports because we are talking about the capacity, the body capacity. That is why I'm putting up the example of sports. And I strongly feel that women are good in sports, being a hockey player myself. And here, let's correlate Simone's perspective and understand that the biological weaker argument comes from men who thinks that they are the subjects and we the objects. The equality that we want to achieve is of mind and not of body. And because we know and we embrace our bodies and we embrace the way we are born very happily. And we are proud of it. We don't want the bodily equation. We just want that everyone should treat us as individuals.
Absolutely. And I don't think there's any substance to it as well. Very rightly pointed out. So usually people who point this out are men. Of course, like I'm sure you can find women who would say the same, that when women are not equal and we are the weaker beings. But of course, that's again something you need to investigate. Is this something that they've been made or coerced to believe, or why do they believe in such a thing? And yeah, so I think that completely makes sense. Thank you so much. I particularly, I think it's very fascinating that you took Simone de Beauvoir, right? So there's a bit of a history with Simone de Beauvoir as well. We in undergrad, we read about existentialism and we read about Jean-Paul Sartre. And Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir were, you know, same level of intellectuals sitting in a cafe of Paris, but somehow people know about Jean-Paul Sartre and people know of Simone de Beauvoir as the girlfriend or the partner of Jean-Paul Sartre, which makes me immensely sad because that happens not only in literature, it doesn't happen in intellectuals, but it happens in art. So people know about Pollock's paintings, but people don't know about Lee Krasner's paintings. So people know about men, but they don't know about women. And it's particularly excellent that you chose Simone de Beauvoir. And could you tell me a little bit about like what about Simone de Beauvoir attracted you to include her text in feminism?
I personally, it was when I first of all, that basic thing which really made me say, wow, it was at what year the book was written.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes,
it was almost 70 years back, and her views were so much, you know, they are so prevalent in the today's scenario as well. So I was like, how can anyone think like that? And she had, and I'm sure her views will be there till the next 50 years. I hope not. But I think because the way she has seen women, it takes a lot of courage, and she was criticized also for that. And she had to face a lot of criticism for that. But I was really fascinated at the age and which year she wrote the book.
Right. So was that
obviously her ideas? Yeah, obviously her ideas. Obviously.
Yeah. Was there a lot of resistance to her work back when her work was published?
Yes. Actually, the author had to face a lot of issues, and her book was even banned in Spain. And the Spanish feminists smuggled in the copies of books to circulate it in secret. And finally, the Spanish translation of Second Sex was published in '98.
I see. Oh wow! So that's like almost half a decade later.
Exactly. The Europe authorities were also afraid of the mass circulation of the book, because the book spoke such massive and cultural change in Europe itself, where until the 1966, abortion was still illegal, contraception was extremely difficult to access, and even her personal life, she did not find a lot of support from her family. And with this progress of education and thoughts, she alienated herself from many. And because she had this prodigious capacity for synthetic reading and analysis, and did not consider herself inferior to anyone. And she propagated the same. We should not consider ourselves inferior, because we are not. If someone is treating us like that, doesn't mean that we become like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. Thank you for telling me that. I mean, I did not realize the intensity of the difficulties Simone de Beauvoir might have experienced, because again, Jean-Paul Sartre was the particularly dangerous man at that time, right? People hated him in France, and he rejected Nobel Prize, and he was called dangerous man who should be burned because of the educational revolution he started in Paris. But then nonetheless, Simone de Beauvoir perhaps experienced more trouble publishing her work than Jean-Paul Sartre. Really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah. And the sad part is just because she was a female.
Just because she was a female, not perhaps dangerous in whole ways of promoting feminism. Right. So this next question that I associate with quite a lot, and this is also a very common question that came in. Why do you think that feminism often receives a lot of criticism, scrutiny, and defensiveness from men? When you have to talk to men about feminism, it'll always end up in a very critical thing. Why do you have to say feminism? Why do you have to use the term feminism? And they become defensive the moment you use the term feminism. Why does this happen?
Okay. So first of all, we need to understand that when you point a finger and you say you are a culprit, it is our primal nature to defend ourselves, you know, and the defense mechanism can be criticism, degrading, or, you know, just ridiculing it. So no privileged group or no class will ever be able to see the outgroup empathetically. That is in us, okay? And nobody wants to lose their power of benefit of other, okay? So so it is not like that. It happens in every stage, in every sector. If you see, any privileged group will never see their power, you know, getting down, or they can't just give their power to everyone. So because they feel privileged by that. Okay, when let's not talk about males, let's talk about females. Okay, let's take a scenario. I'll just give you an example of the salary pay gap. Okay, within the gender itself. So supposing another female with the same set of qualifications and skills is being underpaid, I would like to ask, how many of you will give up your part of salary so that everyone is paid equal? Many of you might refuse. So it is the same philosophy. So change is coming, but it's gradual, and we have to change ourselves first and then focus on the support for others. The females, especially I'll talk about India, we have a lot of females become, now some people say that, you know, females are only the one who are barricading or who are acting as barriers to the development of females. Well, for some extent, it's true, because we have this stereotype, you know, all over our head, and we just want to follow what our mothers have followed. We just don't want to have a change. Even supposing my mom still might be thinking that why am I not cooking, or why I don't do such kind of work while she was doing all such kind of work. So we need to change our mindset first, and then we need to you know, ask others to help us.
Yeah, I remember, Dr. Sneha, that we were once having a conversation around exactly what you said, which reminds me how we were talking about intersectionality of feminism. And you just brought up the whole, the point about mother, right? The relationship that women have with other women. And I think there's so much to empathize with when we talk about our mothers, or we talk about leaders, women leaders that we've experienced in our life. And feminism itself has so many pockets, right? So feminism, people who are elite can practice feminism more conveniently. People of certain colors, for example, when feminism as a movement started, and when the suffragette movement started, as you mentioned, in the US, was led by white women. So, you know, women of Black and ethnic minority women were kind of led behind. So just by the virtue of being woman plus other things, your throwness keeps increasing a little bit. And that's something I think quite fascinating to talk about, which gets me to a question that we've been getting a lot on the Q&A block over here. I'm just going to paraphrase a couple of questions. One of the common ones is that it's easy to talk about equality and feminism in institutional settings, right? It's easy to talk about it in universities or in academia. But how, when it comes to your own family, we are unable to touch these difficult dialogues. What would be your recommendation to young people joining us today? How should they approach this dialogue? How should they propose the idea of feminism in their families in a more subtle way, where it's very difficult to talk about complicated issues?
Okay. First of all, when you talk about like, supposing, I know it's very difficult when you talk about, because people, you think that if I say something, people should not be offended, or they shouldn't feel bad or something like that. But the one thing, if they need to stand for their own rights, they need to be rigid on their views. They can't play with whenever they feel like, okay, this thing is giving me a lot of, it's giving me this thing is becoming easier for me to be a dependent one, then I become a dependent one. But at times when I want to be, stand for my own rights, I stand for my own rights. So we are actually playing being a dependent and independent ones. Okay, supposing, we do try to play with this thing. The things which were convenient for us, we move that way. So we shouldn't do that, first of all, because at the moment you do it, it contradicts your own, principle. What do you want to stand for, basically? Do you want to, according to your convenience, you can't do that. As a female, if you're facing something, you need to face it. At that time, you can't say that you help me out, or a man of the house should help me out. You should do it on yourself. So first of all, stand on your points and stand for the views that you're propagating. And don't play according to the convenience. And if you are going to do that, I'm telling you for sure, 100%, everybody slowly and gradually will understand. And they will, because I have seen such females in my life. I have met a few of my friends who have stood for themselves, and society has questioned them, and society have time and again, pointed out at their characters, but they were so rigid about their views, about their own perspective, about how they want to live. And now everyone appreciates them. Everyone looks up to them. So it takes time. It takes a lot of time, but you need to be very firm with that.
Absolutely. It's a constant battle. You can't really give up, right? If you call yourself a feminist, or you believe in the ideology of equality, it's a lifetime game. And
exactly.
Stop. That's what absolutely. I think that's fantastic, because I think there's a whole matter of convenience and inconvenience as well. And we're getting a lot of questions on pseudo-feminism. This reminds me of the little joke that I remember I was reminded of, where there's this young girl who's an independent young woman, and she's lying on her bed very sick. And then she says, who's going to come pamper me and take care of me? And I'm looking for a man, or I'm looking for somebody. And then she realizes, wakes up from her dream and says, oh, I forgot that I was a feminist. So I think it's right. With activism or with equality comes a lot of responsibility, which you have to be very aware of. So that's great. There's another theme that I'm getting quite a lot from the Q&As. And this is going to be my last question to you. What is an ideal woman? Because there's so much of contradiction around it. Some people on the group are saying the ideal woman, is it the religious mythological understanding of the goddesses that we know of? Or is it a woman who's progressive, knows how to do makeup, knows how to stand up for herself? Is it a woman who's very, very academic like yourself? What is a perfect woman?
Okay, so there's no answer for that what is a perfect woman, but personally, because it's very subjective. Okay, it's very personal. So if I say a perfect woman is a person who feels contented the way she is. Okay, if she is contented the way that she needs to look after the house and she has no problems with that, perfect. I'm not saying that you have to fight for your rights and go and march on the streets. Not at all. If you're contented the way you are, and if you're satisfied with your lifestyle, if you're satisfied with your dreams and aspirations, and you're good with the skin, you're comfortable with the skin you are, and you're perfect. But if any point of time you have to compromise, compromise everyone does. It's not that the woman is also only doing compromise, but if any point of time when you think that things are going, you can't have control of things, and you want to do certain things and you're not able to do because of constraints from outside, and those constraints are only based on you being a female, then, that makes a problem. So you should be satisfied the way you are. And that will make a woman a perfect woman in whatever, supposing if I'm, as if I'm talking about, I'm a mother of two. So if I feel that I'm not giving enough of time to my children and I'm working, but it is giving me satisfaction. So it is not making me a lesser of a mother, or it's not making me a lesser of a woman. See, so you don't have to, your self-worth shouldn't be contingent upon the views of others. You have to like your way. You have to like the way you are. as a person, as an individual, and yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's excellent. And I see some trolls on the chat box if you really want to.
I knew it because this is such a controversial subject, but I'm ready for it.
In fact, I'm just reading out a very interesting question, if you allow me. Somebody with a name anonymous, they call themselves student. I don't know, is writing, you both are boosting your ego and not talking about the views of Simone de Beauvoir on feminist. I think, yeah, I'm sorry, we probably are not boosting your ego, anonymous student, but nonetheless, we are talking about the idea of being woman. I'm sorry, I couldn't refrain myself.
We are actually trying to integrate her views. Exactly.
Yes.
So I just want to tell this woman, whoever, or this person, whoever, so go and read the book once, and then we can talk once again.
So the book that we're talking about in hand is The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir, one of the commonly available books. I'm sure you can find e-copies of it right now as well during the pandemic. Excellent time to read it. I'm going to stop the session. We're going to stop the session at this point. Thank you so much, Dr. Sneha, for sharing your fantastic views with us. And it's really going to stay with us, and we're going to be questioning ourselves and our ideas of feminism, our ideas of people around us. And thank you so much for such overwhelming responses from people who have plugged in anonymously, non-anonymously. And it was really an enriching experience. The Department of Psychology at IASU, deemed to be university, is very excited to have finished our second seminar, and we have a lot more in store for you. We will be taking Sunday off. It's God's day. It's the day for you as well. Think about difficult questions, and we will get back to you on Monday evening again at the same time. Please follow us on social media to find out what are we doing next. And yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shikha. Thank you for, you were really good. Thank you so much. It was all my pleasure. Yeah, thank you.